Greetings and welcome to Season 3 of the Why I Love Disney podcast. We are back finally. I'm here with my friends David and Easton. David, how's it going, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
We're back. Season 3. I couldn't be any better than I am
Yes.
with you guys talking about Disney stuff. And I say you guys, we have someone new. I mentioned Easton. If you've listened before, you're like, well, who's Easton? Easton is our new friend who's going to be here talking all things Disney with us. What is up, Easton? How are you doing, sir?
I'm great. I can't wait to talk all things Disney with you guys. I'm just so happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're happy to be here. We're going to start this off really quick by letting people know a little about you and making sure you have the qualifications to participate in the Why I Love Disney podcast, all right? So, describe your Disney fandom on a scale of 1 to 10.
Oh man, fandom, it's got to be an easy 10. It's so high. You know, I grew up just loving the movies, like watching movie after movie. You know, we didn't go to the parks a whole lot growing up, a little more now than used to, but was just all in on all the movies cuz they're just so good.
Okay, well let's ask you, what's your favorite all-time Disney movie?
My favorite all-time Disney movie, I think nostalgia requires me to say a Goofy movie. Based on how likely I am to rewatch a movie over and over, I've got to pick The Emperor's New Groove. That's just,
Okay.
it's so good, it's so funny, and it's so easy to watch.
I think both of those are great choices, Easton. Those pass, okay? But have you been to the parks, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so now favorite ride across all parks.
Favorite ride across all parks is hard, but we were able to go to Disneyland Paris that I think old Pops here can talk about a little bit when we get to it. But there's a ride there called Crush's Coaster that's pretty awesome that I wish was here either in California or in Orlando because I would want to ride that one every time.
So what was it called? Crush's Coaster? See, I don't know this one, but I've heard this is incredible.
It is. It's so good. You're sitting on the back of a turtle and you're kind of on a roller coaster, but the thing is your seat is spinning. Kind of like Cosmic Rewind at Epcot.
Okay.
It's kind of like that, but it's just
It's different.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a little more family friendly, but
Okay.
the coolest thing about it, of course, for our family being there this time, we had never done it before, so we really went into it completely blind. I mean, because you can't. It's a lot of it's in the dark, and you can't watch it. You can't watch a video online. So it was really fun, and I think it's the first roller coaster I've ever been on where I lost perception
Okay.
of what was up and down. I felt like I was in the water, and I for a minute you're like, wait, which end is up?
That's
And
pretty
but it
cool.
was it was, it was really fun. It's pretty easy. It's a great, so smooth. Man, we actually went back and I think that was we made it. Everybody went back and we wrote it a second time. So
Awesome.
That's a great pick, Easton.
Okay. Well, all right, third question. And this is just kind of, I want you to think through this, all right? You don't have to answer right away. But of all the lands of any park, right? Tomorrowland, Frontierland, Fantasyland, Adventureland. You could even go as far as like, Galaxy's Edge, whatever. Any of you went, where would you most like to live if you had to live in one?
Yeah, that one's a thinker. Okay. I think I think I think I might would live in Tomorrowland.
And what is the main reason?
The main reason, I mean, come on, you've got the people mover. Like
That's true.
I feel like that'd be one of the best places to sleep.
You know who has not slept on the People Mover? I mean, that's for sure, 100%. You could also probably hang out in the Carousel of Progress, because maybe you could let him leave you on, and you could just sort of
Yeah, just
make the loop.
continuously.
Okay. Yeah, dude, I could do Tomorrowland's a great place to live. I could see you got transportation. You've got plenty of food. You've got rockets. You're set. You got places to sleep, things to go. All right, Tomorrowland. Easton, it's great to have you, man. We're thrilled that you're here and can't wait to talk to you about all this stuff. So usually getting back in here, we do a recap of the last year and we talk about what we're excited about for the next year. So what if we do that, guys? Would that be okay with you guys?
Sounds good.
To kind of look back at 2023. What are the things over the past year that you were most happy with in the Disney universe that made you excited generally from the last year? What were the hits from Disney?
Well, I mean, my favorite thing from the past year, Disney-wise, was definitely what Easton just said, that we got to go as a family to Disneyland Paris, and that was just a big bucket
So,
list.
not to cut you off, I'm so sorry, but we probably should explain to the listeners that Easton is your son-in-law.
Yes, Easton is new to our family this past year,
Yes.
and he's also been one of our biggest listeners. I bet he's listened to every podcast we've ever done, and
That was where the old pops reference came in
Yeah.
earlier, and now when you say our family went, that kind of puts it all together. John David is your son,
Yes.
and he was also on this Disneyland Paris trip, and he'll join us from time to time as well. But now I just wanted to bring the listeners up to speed on that. All right.
John David's been apart for a good while. He has just recently moved to New York City. And has a new job, so he is kind of busy right now. But he's going to join us some as well. But we're glad to have Easton here, and we all took a trip, our family of 7, and went to Disneyland Paris this past year in the spring, and just an incredible time. It was so good. I can't describe how good it was. It was, and because when you've done Disneyland and you've done Disney World, and it was just so interesting to be at a place you didn't know everything about. And even though I had read a lot, there was just so many things we had not seen before, and just the layout, the feel, the design. It's really beautiful. Just things you know, hard to describe it, but it was a great trip. It was a lot of fun all the way around. So that was just getting to go there, being there with the whole family, the getting to stand on Main Street and watch a fireworks drone show, which was just amazing. All there together, right in front of the castle, and it not a million people all around you. It was just a different feel. It was crazy. So we had a great time.
So would you say where does it rank on your favorite Disneyland parks or Disney parks?
Well, that's really hard because, I don't have the nostalgia for it. This was my first trip. And nostalgia, just like Easton was saying with Goofy movie, that's such a nostalgia place for him because he grew up watching that from the time he could remember. And so, the Walt Disney World park it's just kind of my home park because that's the one I went to. But I have a huge fondness for Disneyland. I don't know what it is about the California park, but it just feels different. When you're in Magic Kingdom there, you feel like this spirit that's just different. I have a nostalgia for that because I grew up watching that one on television so much, and that Walt was there, and it's so much of its original. It's still there from the 50s. So there's a lot about that park that's my favorite too. But this trip, Disneyland Paris, it blew it out of the park. We all loved it. I wish we could go back, but I'm not sure when that will be.
That's great. I'm so excited to hear about that. I'd love to go myself one day. You may really, I think when it first opened, there were like a lot of just question marks around it. But apparently they found their stride, and it's really turned into a real destination trip in all for Western Europe, really.
There are a lot of things they could do to the Studios park. I mean, they know that it needs new attractions, but it had some great things. And what's amazing about it is that our hotel, we could walk from our hotel to both parks, and you can walk between both parks, and it's just very accessible. And it's just that was a lot of fun. We could go from park to park, which we did, and we did not have a long trip there, but we had enough time to do things twice, to a couple of things 3 times, and I took excessive notes, so we could do a whole podcast on Disneyland Paris at some point.
Sounds like a season 3 topic for sure. Easton, what are your hits and what are you happy with from 2023? What were some of your favorite Disney items?
Well, the Paris trip is a steal. Like, that's an easy number 1 pick. But I'm gonna pick something different since he went ahead and took that. You know, there's a handful of movies that came out, you know, during this past year, and there were a few that were, I think, pretty awesome. So I'm big into the like the MCU. I love that stuff. I eat it up. So there were a couple of movies that, you know, Marvel released, and I was really happy with the third Guardians movie that came out last year. You know, kind of a good little refresher of what kind of
Yeah.
Marvel used to
Yeah,
be.
I enjoyed that as well, and I do think it was kind of a harkens back to the pre-Infinity War era, you know, where they were just hitting everything out of the park and everything mattered, and you couldn't miss a single thing. You know, what's interesting about Guardians, I don't know if you agree with this, Easton and David, but Guardians was one of the Marvel properties that was incredibly successful without like a household name superhero. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't Iron Man, it wasn't Spider Man, it wasn't
Right.
Thor, it wasn't Captain America, it wasn't the Hulk. You know, all the ones we knew really, really well. Here we had this other property, and it kind of, you know, through the talents of that amazing cast and the director, and because it was a little different, it did something really, really well and got us to fall in love with new characters that we did not previously know. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah, I agree.
And
Yeah.
I hope we kind of all hoped it would be the blueprint for the next phase of the Marvel universe, but nothing new has really caught on like that yet. Dude, I agree with you, Easton. I thought that was a great movie.
Yeah, I think now it's getting a little bit harder because they are like you have essentially the Avengers, right? The original 6, and you've got this group that kind of, you know, they're moving into newer, fresh characters that people who aren't comic people, you know, who aren't really into the comic books, these characters, they don't really recognize them. I think it all just kind of points back to nostalgia. Like they're not nostalgic for, you know, any, you can pick any of these new people, right? Miss Marvel, whatever you want to pick. Like they're not nostalgic for
Right.
them like they are for, say, a Captain America or an Iron Man, which I think does make it a little more difficult.
Definitely more difficult. And if you want people to watch and stick around, they better be really, really good.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things we're talking when we talk about disappointments too, is that generally speaking, I think most of the stuff that came out last year was not as good as Guardians 3. And for a lot of that reason, there are a lot of characters we're not familiar with, and then if we're not familiar with them, then it better be great. And they just honestly probably weren't. So I think in contrast, especially Guardians stands out among the pack as one of the better. And I'm looking at the box office too now. It was the highest grossing Disney movie of 2023 by
Oh, yeah.
quite a bit actually. It looks like 60 million more than The Little Mermaid, which was number 2. There was mixed reviews on The Little Mermaid. I thought it was probably, I haven't seen it, but I've heard in the general consensus it's probably better than most people thought for a live action. Um, I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that either, but the point being that Guardians was a smash hit, and Disney desperately needed one of those. Um, yeah, amongst them all, I think Little Mermaid was next. Ant-Man and the Wasp. I did see that one. It was okay. Again, wasn't as good as Guardians, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also hard too with like I think now everyone's, what's it called, like level or expectation level is that of Infinity War or Endgame.
sure.
It's just so high, the expectations now. And I'm trying, you know, with all these new stuff that's coming out, I'm really trying to look at it through a lens of what would you have expected when Iron Man and Captain America was coming out. You know, kind of these characters
Yeah,
that are very kind of separated until, you know, the post credits scenes, which is
sure.
I think something that kind of made it feel a little more like you could invest in it because there's some kind of tease, you know, for connecting movies, right?
Right, right.
Whereas these feel kind of a little more separate. Like you can't really connect Loki with Moon Knight right now because there's nothing that doesn't feel like there's anything that is related between them.
Yeah, I agree. And I
Yeah,
think that I don't necessarily expect everything to be on the level of Endgame and even Infinity War because those kind of were like the climax of a 10-year saga. But I do compare everything to like Avengers, like the like those first movies like that just they all came together and it really grabbed the, everybody's attention because this was such a fun event. And I don't think that that's been captured again. I mean and that's what I think that it's also about nostalgia, and sometimes that just seems to be something that uh, the executive powers there, whether it's parks or film, don't really seem to understand or want to give fans. It's nostalgia. It's like, no, we want to give you new. We want to give you this. This is what you want. And it's like, no, no, people really want a sense of nostalgia. And if you're not going to give the same characters, somehow you have to create that same nostalgic feeling that makes people want to see this. So that's my opinion anyway. I think that's a huge part of their fan base, is that people come back to the parks where movies, Marvel, Star Wars, whatever it is, and it's about, how did I connect with this the first time I saw it, and how does it draw, does it connect with that same heart space that I have for it, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And that's what I think's missing. It just doesn't quite have that. And it's like they're trying to really just go for a whole new audience and to create that
Right.
that nostalgia for them, but it just doesn't seem to they're not getting the numbers, I don't think, to really be able to do that. So they're counting on the rewatchability of all these things. So we'll have to see if the current if the current audience they're targeting watches these things over and over again, or if they just move on to something else. Whether it builds up that nostalgia and that fan base, because they're just not really appealing to the current older fan base, or the previous fan base.
Yeah, there was a period of time where anything they released, everyone was going to run to. And what's happening now is now we're like, we're going to check the reviews first. We're not to the misses yet, but my miss for 2023, spoiler alert, is the Marvels. I went and saw it in theaters, and it was perfectly okay. It was not, I would not call it terrible. I just wouldn't call it
Right.
great. And I wish I would have waited till Disney Plus. And I think now when you get a few of those movies that come out like that, you're not gonna just, oh, Marvel's got something new out, I'm running to that. I think what's the one that just came out? Madam Web.
Oh
Is that,
yeah,
Yeah, that's a Sony movie.
it's Sony? Well,
yeah.
it's still Marvel, and I think it's become famous because it's the lowest rated superhero movie of all time at this point on Rotten Tomatoes. It's one of those that's becoming popular because it's so terrible.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen that yet, but either way, it's just really interesting. I hope they can get back on track because it is a magical thing when they are clicking on all cylinders, right?
It is, and it's will they kind of look at what they've made and go, okay, this is not what the audience wants, or if they'll go, no, we're going to do this again until they like it. That's that's the thing we've got to wait and see.
Well, they can, but I think money is always the ultimate, right? I hope anyway, and that goes to, and I do think they're willing to make some concessions because that was the one thing I have over the past year. My hit would be a news item, and that is that park reservations are now going away. Um, and it seems like they're trying to make things a little bit more user friendly and listening to feedback, even though it might cost them a little bit in the short term in terms of what they can do with staffing and restaurants and things like that. They're giving up a little bit of control to make the user and guest experience a little better. And I thought that was at least a good sign that they're listening to some feedback.
Yes, it is. I mean, that is definitely something. If you follow Disney news and you follow Disney fandom, and you're online and you're watching things on YouTube and watching vloggers and reading blogs, there was a lot of talk for the past 3 years, 3 or 4 years, about these park reservations and how limiting they were. If you're trying to go to the park, and the hoops you had to jump through to make sure you had the right reservation plus your ticket, when instead of your ticket being your reservation. But so it is nice that they finally eliminated that. Of course, if you're an annual pass holder, people like that still have to have reservations, and but it's not completely gone. But for most people, if you have a ticket, you're not gonna have to go through that hoop, and you can park hop again, which is a nice thing, because you did have to wait till 2 o'clock. And so a lot of things like that, there have been some concessions made. So I think that is a good sign. Of course, I have a feeling that they haven't just done it because they've had some complaints. I think they probably have counted the numbers and looked at things and said what works best for us, and probably made that decision too. But I'm glad it's gone away either way.
Yeah, that was my hit, my kind of the thing I was most excited about from the last year. And moving to now, like, what were the things you were most disappointed in from the last year? And I think I already mentioned mine. Mine was the Marvels. I think that was well underwhelming. We'll just call it that, and that it's indicative of kind of a trend with Disney movies. In fact, when we started this podcast, Disney was making billion-dollar movie after billion-dollar movie, just crushing at the box office. And since in the last couple years, Universal has caught them, and Universal's passed them in revenue at the box office. They're also right hot on their heels trying to catch up in parks too. So, what do you find were your biggest misses from 2023, or what were you most disappointed with, I should say?
Well, my biggest miss for 2023 would have been just the overall perception of how the public seems to view this company. What a difference 4 years can make than when we started this podcast. And I mean, we called this podcast when we started Why I Love Disney because I did sense some negativity. A lot of fan sites were very negative, and I was like, if we're going to do this, I want to talk about what we love. But in the past 4 years, the number of fan bases that are negative, opposed to just, hey, let's go to the park, let's talk snacks, let's talk new foods at the festival. I mean, there's way more discussion now about the behind the scenes running of the company than the product that they're putting out. And that's very sad. And I can't believe when it started, even when we had to take a little hiatus here this past year, the the stuff with Bob Chapek going out and the behind the scenes, this person said this and they let him go under these, and it was under these conditions, and I was like, why do we know all this? How does this stuff get out? It's like a bunch of unprofessional leaks of information coming out. That
Like
just really
middle
was
school
weird.
drama.
Well, yeah, and then it just got worse. Like the whole year, it just got worse. We were plunged into these political things with the governor of Florida. We had lawsuits like crazy,
Bob
movies
Iger's fight with Elon Musk.
movies flopping like crazy. It's one oh no, another box office mess up after another, and from Strange World to the Marvels to Little Mermaid not performing as well, to Wish, the 100th anniversary movie. Failing at the box office and getting poor reviews, and then just even the mainstream media starting to do articles and things and lawsuits. I mean, there was just even a lawsuit this past week about someone who died from an allergy at Disney Springs because their food wasn't prepared the way they were told it was going to be. I mean, just little things like that. You just didn't hear these things. It's like something is not right. I mean, just the way things are being run. That to me, that's the biggest thing. If you make a movie and it doesn't do well, I mean, Walt Disney made movies that didn't do well. I mean, that's the way the movie industry works. You have a big hit, kind of covers if you have some that are mediocre. It happens, your public perception of being a certain, just bombing on the public level is a whole different thing. And
Yes.
I'm like, you think that they would be like, we got to fix this. We got to fix this at all costs. We don't want to look like we don't know what we're doing. And because of that, they have proxy wars going on right now where you've got people trying to get board seats because there is this creation of not only is there financial losses, but it's like, does anybody here have know what we're doing? It's I can't believe it. I can't believe really like that it can be middle school like it is. And no offense if you're in middle school, but that's what it seems like with just little spats and things. And of course, all these people are making multi-million dollars. So just like this week, if they announce that the guy that's been over motion pictures that has made these live action movies that aren't doing well, he's been over this whole he's departing. And so people are like, oh, he got fired. It's like, well, if he did get fired, he is still going out making multi-millions of dollars. So it's like, it's really the fans that constantly lose out. We lose out on great movies. And when movies fail, parks don't get what they're supposed to get, because the parks are what really makes money, and when the movies fail, it pulls from the parks. So we don't get new attractions, we don't get new things to see there. So that's my biggest disappointment. That's a long-winded thing, but it's the thing that I'm really going in 2024. Please let's see some turnaround. Please let something happen that you know is a big, big, big win.
I hear you, man. What about you, Easton?
Well, kind of to piggyback a little bit, I think there is, this kind of shift, specifically in how the company is making movies, right? Like, I feel like Disney used to be very intentional about writing a good story, even if there's an underlying message there. If you think about a movie like Zootopia, it probably goes in the list of perfect movies, right? To me, personally. You've got a great story that tells you this message about prejudices without being so at the forefront. Whereas right now, everything you watch, there's like a very obvious, because it's like they're telling you, almost feel like you're trying to be guilted into saying, I don't know, trying to guilt you, basically, like a guilt trip movie.
Preaching to you. Like,
Yeah.
change your mind about this rather than being subtle about it and winning us over with an awesome story, right?
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
with you. I can see that. I don't like movies that are heavy-handed in their message, right? Let me assume I'm smart enough to pick it up without you having to, smack me in
Right.
the face with it.
I think a great movie always gives multiple. You'll walk out with different interpretations. It will hit us all differently in different spaces. And so when the message is so
Yeah,
literal and so in your face that there's nothing else here. It's just you're preaching a strong message. And again, it's like it's not so much about what that message is. It's that it's just so obvious and so it's like you're gonna as I'm watching this, I'm going, wow, you're all I can think about is you're alienating you're doing crazy things here. Why are you doing this? I'm focused more on what you're trying to put in than just the story. And it is supposed to be about story. It's not supposed to be about a message necessarily or an ideology. So it's the same thing. Like I saw a great thing this week about how much story has and the reason I say this because they're talking so much about story. Disney is about stories. That's been very big in the, which is kind of a political thing, I think, more than anything. But they say it's about stories, about story. And then you go kind of look at the way they designed theme park attractions. Now, it used to be very based on story, but now if you look at things like Tron, you go in and you kind of ride this roller coaster, and there's very little story there. Unless you know the backstory already, unless you know those movies well, you could ride Tron and not see a story at all. And whereas there used to be things like Pirates of the Caribbean that you walk through this whole thing and you experience story, or even a classic like Splash Mountain, which had a very strong story of at the beginning of the attraction, he's thinking, I want to go on an adventure. I'm tired of being here. And by the end, he gets caught and he gets thrown in the briar patch. That's the story you go on. And they don't really even do that in attractions, but it's still a big byline in the movies. And so you go, man, story, it has to be so impeccable, because if the message and the ideology outshadows the overall heart value of the story, then you're not going to have a hit. I mean, because it has to be the heart of the story is what's going to give you a hit.
I completely agree. Story over messaging, I guess. And anytime I
Yeah.
feel like I'm being talked to like I'm a child, or I feel like my intelligence is insulted in some of these movies. Like, come on, man. Let's, the kind of the great stories are the ones you're extrapolating. Man, this touched on. I didn't even realize this touched on this issue so deeply. And
Right.
it's kind of a metaphor. That's the beauty of art, right? I think that the cheapest art is the art that is too obvious, right? It assumes a certain juvenile audience to begin with. It talks down to your audience even, and yeah, I completely agree with that. I think, and now that
Right.
hearing you guys talk, I've sensed that as well in some of the things, and maybe even less so in the movies, more in the shows. like the Disney Plus shows in the past couple years. There've been a few that I've enjoyed, but a few that have kind of missed as well. I think maybe most obviously was Willow. Had such high. I love. It's one of my favorite all-time Lucasfilm movies from the late '80s, and that series was just like, man, like could have done some incredible things, and they just whiffed to the point where it's completely canceled.
And that's another example of public perception, because before I could even watch it, there was so much negative everywhere I turned about how bad it was. And so before I got a chance to watch it, or got up to like, well, I guess I'm going to watch this, they had removed it. And which is, you can't even imagine that they're going to create all this content and then just let it flop, and
Yeah.
then do away with it for a tax write-off. I mean, that's something we've never seen before. We have them
That's an
go,
extra level of bad. Yeah.
like they'll pull their new product away. They'll put disclaimers and hide old product because they're not proud of it. They don't have any nostalgia for their own product. None. I don't think they have any nostalgia for the as executives. I don't think they have nostalgia for the parks, and I don't think they have nostalgia for their movies. So therefore, they can't understand why their fan base does. And so they'll go, well, we're not going to release these things. And I'm not talking about the Splash Mountain movie. I'm talking about a lot of things that they just, let's let that go, because they're focused only on their own little, this is my bubble, this is what we've done, and they don't think apparently the whole picture. It's like they're just focused on this little backyard that they've got, and their legacies and their careers, and that's kind of where we are.
I would agree with that, and I do. I'm hopeful that with when you start losing money and the bottom line is affected, that talks usually loudest. Hopefully, I know you're skeptical of that, but I am hopeful that we can shift a different direction. Which brings us to the next topic that kind of flips on the other side of this is looking forward to 2024. What are you most excited about this year? And in terms of, it could be a thing that's coming out or something that you've got personally in the works. What are you most excited about this coming year? I'll start with you, Easton. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I don't know if you've ever heard of this specific character, but there's a pretty big movie that I'm excited for that's coming out. And if you haven't heard of him, it's okay. But his name's Deadpool, and I'm really, really excited about that. I think the first two,
Yeah, that's a big one.
the first two are hilarious, and just to bring him into the MCU by way of TVA is pretty incredible. And you're bringing back Wolverine, which is awesome. Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds, they're the only people that could have played those roles. And so I'm really excited to see what they do with this third one. I'm just really excited. It just looks like it's going to be like a lot of fun.
I agree. That's a big one.
I think it's going to be very important how well it does. I mean, I think they need a hit, and this movie definitely has the star power. I mean, with Ryan and Hugh Jackman, it has the ability to bring in a lot of people just based on them. So I think they'll get a hit, but we'll see what they do with it.
Yeah, I think it's got to be as close to a guaranteed hit as they can. But it's all about expectations. Does it meet expectations? And they're very, very high for this. So we'll see. But I'm excited about that as well. I think that's going to be a huge one. David, what are you most looking forward to in 2024?
I'm looking forward to doing this podcast, because a lot of this stuff this past year, I was like, man, I wish we had a chance to talk about some of these things that we've watched unfold, and because it's good to hear other people's perspectives, because we're all different age groups, and we have different things that we love about Disney, one thing more than another. So it's fun to talk about these things and learn and grow and go, hey, am I thinking? Am I thinking about this the right way? Is what I'm perceiving from this correct? And so I love hearing you guys feedback on things. So if I need to grow in some areas, that's always good to hear. But I'm hopeful. I mean, I'm hoping. We saw a couple of things this past week. When you hear there's a rumor of a Moana attraction. that might come, and that for a while there they had rumored that they would do Animal Kingdom, which was like, oh, I wouldn't want that, because I really was one of the few people I think that really thought that new area in Dino Land needs to be an area of the world. We've got Africa, we've got Asia, so to go to South America or Central America, if that involves Encanto or whatever properties they want to put in there. That's what I thought it needed to be, because you want to go hear about the animals of that area, the food from that area. I don't just want an Encanto, but anyway, the whole point was that somebody was saying that there was a rumor that this week of that there might be a Moana attraction coming to Adventureland, and and I think if they did something like Crush's Coaster, but it was kind of themed to Moana, that'd be a fun thing. But all the reason I bring that up is that I'm hopeful, because of the pressure of Universal, that at this D23 this fall, that we'll really get some concrete. Here's what we're doing next. Here's what's going to happen. Because the past few years, it's just been a lot of we may do this, we may do this. What if we did this? But there's been no concrete plan. And so I'm really excited for what Universal's doing, because I feel like it might push Disney to make some final decisions, like here's what we're going to do. It's like they're so afraid to do anything that might not be a huge hit. So I think they're leaning, like
Right.
they're looking at things like Moana. That's why we have Guardians of the Galaxy in Epcot. It's like, well, people like Guardians, so it better have Guardians in it, So they're going to do the same thing probably with Moana. It was the biggest stream movie last year. Um, there's supposedly a Moana 2 coming out.
Yeah.
My only thought with that was, Frozen was the biggest IP, and then they did a Frozen 2, and now Moana's the biggest IP. And so I'm a little suspect that when you put out a bunch of things, that it floods the market with that character, and it kind of takes away from the first one. And so we'll see how that plays out. But I'm hopeful that all that to say is that this fall, when they do the D23, I wish we could go this year. We couldn't work it out. We had tickets to go 2 years ago, and that fell through. So I'm hoping that at least we can watch online, and we'll hear some great things, and we'll see some direction finally for where they're going to go.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at a Moana 2 release date of November 27th of this year.
Yeah, it's fast track, and they just signed the original Moana actress just this week,
Hmm.
and
Interesting.
they're just months away from putting this out. So they're taking something that they had already planned for Disney Plus as a series, and they're converting into a movie.
Yeah. No, I think you hit on some things, which gets me to my thing I'm most excited about. I'm actually taking another trip to Universal here in a few weeks, and I'm going to experience Islands of Adventure and Volcano Bay and Universal Studios again. I'm going to be spending a week there. Really excited about that. But that goes to what you're talking about. Yeah, and just my opinion, Universal's just been knocking everything they do out of the park. They have the highest box office from all their movies and all their IP, and they're building and fast tracking a brand new theme park just right across the street from their other theme parks, which is bigger than all of their stuff put together. Really creative stuff too. They have the Super Nintendo World. There'll be a dark universe with all of their monster properties. How to Train Your Dragon, a new Harry Potter area as well, and some really kind of world class attractions that they've already introduced. And I do think that they're thinking big. And when I think the opposite of Disney, they're just like, what do the people want? And let's give them that. And I feel like they're kind of uniquely positioned to take advantage of Disney's troubles too. Literally, they're right down the road on the theme park side of things. They're hitting every button on their movie releases that are just like every one smash hit after smash hit. I was looking at some of their releases over the last year too. More Illumination stuff. The success of Super Mario Brothers, another Minions movie. Every one of those Minions movies it just crushes, and just one after the other. And so when I say I'm most excited about Universal stuff, I really am. Like I think that they're kind of right now setting the bar for things in both theme parks and new content.
Yeah.
There's a few new Disney shows that I'm excited that are coming out. There's a few new Star Wars things. I love all the Star Wars shows. I don't think they've missed on any of them yet. I think there's some better than others. But everything on Disney Plus Star Wars related has been, in my opinion, satisfactory to incredible. And there's been nothing I've watched that I've been like, I didn't like that. In fact, we just finished up Percy Jackson as a family, and I thought my kids loved that. It was really well done. So yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to be excited about with things coming up. I'm pumped. I'm always pumped. Y'all know me. Like there are things that you cautiously are optimistic about, but I do agree with you, David. I think competition and the bottom line kind of drive innovation, and I think Disney's been in a weird place for a long time now. And I don't necessarily I don't necessarily see obvious signs of things changing, but I think little things like getting rid of park reservations, responding to the call of the consumer, say, hey, come on guys, let's get this together, let's tell great stories and create great experiences for your people, and then things will grow again. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to envision that they could get their stuff together pretty quick. We'll see. Right. We'll see, because like you said, a lot of middle school drama right now, but overall I'm optimistic that there will be some really great Disney products coming out in the next few months. So we shall see, though. We shall see.
Yes.
Anything else to add? You guys excited about anything else, or do you guys have anything you want to talk about before? Do you think that kind of sums up our opening episode here in season 3?
No, I'm just glad to be back. It's fun. It's fun sitting here talking about these things. There's a lot we missed this past year, so I'm glad we're going to be back talking each week and talking about all these things as they unfold.
I completely agree. And with that, I think we probably should wind it down. We want to thank all of our listeners who are listening maybe through Spotify or Apple Podcast or on YouTube. However you listen, we're super appreciative. If you have a chance to rate us, you can do that. You can do it on Spotify and Apple for sure. We would love a 5-star review, and we love your feedback too. You can email us at whyilovedisney@gmail.com. whyilovedisney.com is our website, which can also get you to a form that will contact us. We'd love to know what you thought of the last year. What has been Disney's hits and misses? Where are they thriving and excelling? Where are they lacking? You can let us know. We'd love for you to be a part of this conversation as well. But until then, guys, it's been great. Great first episode. I love it. Can't wait to talk again next week. And until then, so long. Farewell.
Yeah, awesome. Great.